Hello, hello, greetings, and welcome to the planetarium. Let's get rid of that starting soon, shall we? Because we're starting now. So last time we began step 2. Cove and I are now 13 years old in this game. We started with feeling like I adjusted our feelings so that we're pretty close friends now because it's been 5 years of living next to each other and being like the only kids in the neighborhood. And also because I got tired of my character saying Cove and I weren't friends. We're gonna do road trip, dinner, and families. If we have time, which we should, because these aren't the longest, we're also gonna do growing and wave. I'm aiming to end the stream by 12 EST. But, with that said, let's get started. Even though you were awake, the sun had barely peeked its head above the horizon, and the sky above was still dark. Though lightning by the minute, I forgot to turn my heater off. Nice. And yes, we do have heaters in spaceships. They're necessary. I should make a spaceship background. The sky above was still dark, though lightning by the minute. Usually you wouldn't be up so early, especially during summer vacation, but today was different. Check on my model, because it was giving me grief the other day. Today, instead of the lazy days you were used to, everything around you was a flurry of activity, as both your family and Cove's prepared for what lay ahead. Because parked in the street, just outside your house, was a massive RV camper, so big you couldn't even see Cove's house behind it. His parents had rented the RV for a few days to take him on a short road trip to see the Redwood National Park. He glanced at Cove, who was standing nearby taking in the scene in front of him. The prospect of the trip had to be a mixed bag for him, but it was only 3 days, so it seemed he was dealing with it as best he could. Especially now that you and your family were joining them. You weren't sure how exactly it had happened. You knew your parents and Cove spoke to each other often, and somewhere along the way, plans were made after Cliff offered to share the space. The parents all thought it was a fantastic idea. You'd already gotten a good look inside while helping to load everything in, and you had to admit that while it was a really big car, fitting that many people inside was going to be snug.
Let's go.
Yeah, I have a... Is Liz coming? 'Cause that's 4 already. 7 people, are we sure? Move it or lose it, kid. Mom bustled past with a cooler in one hand and a large bottle of water under the other. She was upbeat for this early in the morning. Ma, however, seemed to be on the other side of the wavelength. She followed behind her wife, dragging her feet on every step. I can tell who I take after. I'm going to need a whole jug of coffee once we hit the road. You can relate to Ma. It was way too early. Personally, you were as raring to go as your mom. It felt like you were middle ground between the two. I can relate to Ma. It was way too early. You yawned and rubbed at your eyes, still sleepy from the early morning wake-up call. The air outside you was still damp from dew, and that helped make you a bit alert. And then, at the end of the chain, came your sister. She had a bone to pick before the trip officially started. Her rattling off critiques added some level of normalcy to everything new going on. I don't get why I can't sleep in the bed tonight. Nina's the youngest and I'll never fall asleep in that loft. It's probably because I'm the youngest that you can't. We're trying to make things fair on everyone. If you want to play the older card, you should be offering to take the loft both nights. It's important for big siblings to make sacrifices for their younger ones. Elizabeth huffed, not happy with the answer in the slightest, and folded her arms, leaning back against the side of the RV. The trip plans had been nailed down prior, the sleeping arrangements included. Elizabeth still held on to her objections with them. There was a main area in the RV with a couch, loft, and some floor space. At the end of the car was a room with a large bed. Your moms were sharing the bed, Kyra was on the couch, and father and son intended to sleep on the floor. The adults determined that you and Elizabeth would switch between the small loft above the driver's seat and sharing the bed with moms. You were fine with the arrangements, you were excited to sleep in a loft. You felt sharing a bed with your parents was going to be awkward. You were looking forward to a sleepover with your moms. You weren't too happy either, but didn't want to make a fuss. You thought it was unfair that Cove had to sleep on the floor. Huh. I mean, he's the same age as me. So it is a little unfair. But... Well, maybe they'll let me sleep on the floor too. After all, it was supposed to be a trip for him and his family before yours ended up coming along too. Now he'd been kicked out of every bed like space and put on the floor. Yeah. There had to be another way to organize things so it was better for him. You offered to sleep somewhere else, you suggested sharing the loft with Cove, you said nothing about it though. I'm fine with sharing. Cove and I could share the loft when I'm up there. I don't mind making room for him. You took a glance over at Cove. It'd be fun to have a little sleepover, just the two of you. No, that loft is too tiny for two people, even if those people are teens. The last thing we need is one of you rolling off and crushing poor Cliff beneath you. Who will take over his driving shifts? The three other parents all laughed at your mom's joke. Cove simply shrugged with a relaxed smile, and he sighed as you were forced to admit defeat. Alright, you lot, does everyone have everything they need? We're heading out in 5 minutes. Now's the time to double check. You don't want to forget something important. At the word, Elizabeth yelped and dashed back into the house, her bedhead hair bouncing behind her as she went. Ma came over and gave you a smile, settling her hands on her hips. How about you, Nin? Do you have all your clothes packed? Toiletries? Deodorant? Floss? Anything else you can think of? Confident you had it all? Weren't sure? Had to run back inside? You just gave her a flat look. Oh, why would I have the attitude? We weren't sure about that. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but I can't remember what. Ma chuckled and gave you a squeeze on the shoulder. I get like that on trips too, so I've learned to pack extra in case I or anyone else forgets. With the amount of supplies we stuffed into the RV, I think you'll be okay. It's only a few days after all. Thanks, Ma. With a few minutes left to spare before leaving, you mentally went over what you had packed for the trip. Clothes, a pillow, and blanket, usual day-to-day gear for most people. You also had more personal things, such as... Alright, it looks like this is one of those things where we can choose more than one. So, a portable gaming console. The drive to the Redwood National Park would take an entire day one way, so you wanted to make sure you had a way to entertain yourself while traveling there and back. Pencils and paper. You had to be prepared in case you saw something to sketch at the park, or if you had to write anything down, or if you needed to pass time just doodling. God, an MP3 player. Those were the days. Favorite stuffed animal? Without fail, it always made you feel more comfortable whenever you went somewhere new. It was like taking a little piece of home away with you. And a couple of things to read. Oh gosh! You'd packed one of your old favorites and a new one you'd never tried before. You knew you'd have plenty of time for them both on such a long drive. That's exactly how yeah. Very relatable. Whenever I go on a road trip, I always take one of the Wandla series, which is an old favorite, or the Maximum Ride series, and something new. Just in case. And that was everything. Oh, where's my mouse? Hey, let me take that for you, Nin. I'll stow it in the RV. There's a few spots left, it'll fit. Ah, Kyra. You let Kyra take your bag and gave her a grateful smile. With nothing left to do, you watched the others getting ready for the trip. Kyra and Cliff seemed to have the most energy of anyone. They were finished packing the suitcases away while your moms had gone to lock up the house. They high-fived whenever another one got crammed into the storage compartment of the vehicle. Even though your own parents were more low-key than Cove's, you could tell they were both excited for the trip. It had been a while since your family had been anywhere away together. Elizabeth skipped toward the RV, a bag slung over her shoulder, and you were surprised to see if she seemed more optimistic about the whole ordeal now. I wonder what she took. Usually, she wasn't one to exit the confines of a room unless it was for TV or food or to leave her family behind to be with friends. Why do I sound so bitter? You would have thought 3 whole days packed in an RV with 6 others would be too much for her, but it was a nice surprise. You suppose any vacation was better than no vacation in her mind. You know, I can't help but think she went and got something she probably shouldn't have on this family trip. Cove had been pretty quiet so far, and more than anything, seemed to be overwhelmed by the situation. You were excited for the trip too. You weren't excited. You were eager to get to the destination. You were curious about the RV, or you didn't feel much either way about the plans. Excited for the trip, I think. It was great to get away and explore new places. Soon the miscellaneous remaining tasks had all been wrapped up. Oh, is that my allergies? No. It can't be. Everyone piled into the RV. It was officially time for the trip to start. And it did. Cliff took the first shift driving. He cautiously navigated the massive car out of the narrow neighborhood streets. It was touch and go for the first part of the journey. Your moms and Cairo all huddled in the front, trying to get a view of how much space they had on each side. There was a sense of relief when the first long leg of the trip was hit and the RV only needed to go down one stretch of highway for miles. The mom group cleared out of the driver's area, leaving Cove's dad to it, taking more comfortable seats around the main cabin. You felt like you could finally relax now, too. Time slipped by as morning faded away. Before you realized it, the engine of the RV came to a stop, but only halted for a few moments as Cliff jumped out from the driver's seat and Mom took over. Ma was sitting shotgun, giving Mom a quick tutorial on the controls, as it was her first time driving anything this large. Cliff groaned as he headed towards the rest of you, stretching his arms above his head and loosening up his muscles. We're making good progress. I like your shade, man. Yeah, maybe you should take a nap in the back for a while. That was a long haul you just did, and I know you're on less sleep than usual. I think I can figure out why they got divorced. Cliff waved a hand, the trademark grin of his slipping into place. I don't need sleep. Still got a few miles in the old tank. He flexed an arm, showing off his muscles to drive the point about how resilient he was home. And Kyra rolled her eyes in amusement. Dad, everyone has to sleep. Cove shook his head at the tough guy act, though Cliff simply chuckled and ruffled his son's hair. Are you going to be driving again anytime soon, Mr. Holden? I want to know so I can prepare. Did anyone pack some rope? I might need it. There's no seatbelts up here. Elizabeth called down from where she was lounging in the loft above the driving compartment. She was lying on her back, her hair falling over the side and swinging around as the RV started up again and took off down the road. A bag of potato chips was balanced on Elizabeth's stomach, and she tossed a couple in her mouth as Cliff held a hand to his chest, pretending to be offended by the remark. Kyra laughed lightheartedly. Lucky for all of us, we have enough adults to cover the shifts today. He won't be driving again until tomorrow. You stayed quiet. You shook your head at the ribbing. That's a relief. Just enough time to write my last will and testament. You shouldn't gang up on the poor guy. It's not his driving I'm worried about. Just enough time to write my last will and testament. Not you two. The rest of the group laughed while Cliff pouted and he gave an apologetic shrug. Mom then shouted back in her seat to join in on the conversation, a playful smile tilting her lips. What I'm more worried about is this old monster getting us there and back again before falling apart. It looks as though it was built in the early 90s. It must be earlier than some of the occupants. That's just the aesthetic of the decor. It's not that old, I think. Did you ask what year the model was before you rented it? Kyra wrinkled her nose in thought. Yes, I did. I just can't remember what the answer was. Me too. Cliff chuckled at her while the rest of you let out a collective sigh. The RV lurched a little as it picked up speed, and you held onto the ladder to the loft to keep your balance. You felt something graze the top of your head before a weight settled on your yellow hair. When you tilted your chin up carefully to look, you heard the rustling of a bag of chips and realized Elizabeth had rested the end of it on your head. She gestured to the opening, silently offering to share her snack. You took a handful. Thank you. Reaching up, you scooped up some chips. After that, the weight of the packet left your scalp. You happily munched away as the conversation continued on and you got closer and closer to your destination. The day flew by with a group of you chatting, playing games, and passing the time together before finally arriving at the park and settling up for the night. Ma was closing the windows while everyone got ready for bed, saying goodnight to the others as she made her way to the back room. You had all had dinner together while still driving, and some hours after had arrived at your destination and found a spot to park in for the rest of your stay. Giving a look across the front of the RV, you noticed that almost everyone there had already dozed off whereas already dozing off where they were, with Cove having completely fallen asleep curled up in the passenger seat. He must have done so while Kyra was driving the last leg, and they had decided not to disturb him. Kyra herself was the only one up there who was still awake, flipping through a magazine next to a portable light from her spot on the couch. It seemed Mr. Holden intended to sleep despite his claims. You followed your moms into the back room and closed the door behind you before crawling onto the bed between them. It was a queen-sized bed, so there was enough space for the three of you together without too much squishing. Get a good rest, Nan. We've got a big day ahead of us tomorrow.
Fantastic.
Oh my gosh, it was my allergies. Horrible premonition. I'm not taking another Benadryl because that had me falling asleep. Oh, hey, Jack. He's only 13 now, but he's quite adorable already. Gosh, I don't know when you sent that. Sorry. And actually, let me give you moderator. I could put you in timeout, huh? I wish I had a plugin or something that could show me text from the chat. Pop out the chat? Ooh. Sorry, trying things. Toggle timestamps. Alright, you didn't say that too long ago. Alright. I'm looking forward to the bushwalk in the morning. It's been a long time since I was out in nature like this. There'll be plenty for us to see. You stayed awake for a little while your moms whispered about the park and forest in general. With the sound of their voices in the background, eventually you nodded off to sleep. The next morning you were up bright and early. The next morning you were up bright and early, preparing for the day ahead. You'd slept well. Okay, sleep. You slept terribly. Okay. It was nothing compared to your bed at home, but at least you didn't have to sleep on the floor, so you couldn't complain too much. Ma whined about the firmness of the mattress, but Mom would only encourage her to enjoy the trip while she could. While looking for a spot to get ready, you had some trouble finding a space of your own as the others were doing the same thing. Cove was perched on top of the counter, brushing his hair and tucking up his legs every time someone wanted to move past. The parents were checking, double-checking, and triple-checking that you had everything, to the point where you'd stop listening to them altogether. You knew you wouldn't be returning to the RV at all that day, but by the look of the backpacks that were packed up and ready to go, you doubted anything was missing from them. Right? It didn't take much longer until you all exited the RV in a bustle and headed into the Redwood National Park.
Wow.
Cove had his head tilted up towards the canopy of the trees, his eyes wide as he took in the massive trunks on either side of you. You knew that the redwood trees here were considered the tallest trees on Earth, but you weren't prepared for exactly how huge they would be in person. Smile, you two! You spun just in time for Kyra to snap a picture of you and Cove together before she pointed her camera at Cliff, trying to get a shot despite his weak protests that she should just enjoy the moment. Weak indeed. How often do you guys go to Redwood? Your parents were walking behind the group a little, with Mom telling Ma some information she'd read about the park in a brochure. Ma listened happily while looking around and taking in the sights, every now and then asking a question or making a joke about something Mom had said. You smiled at them, thinking your mom must have read a lot of pamphlets to know so much about the park. Maybe you should come here and work as a tour guide if you know so much about the place, Elizabeth teased, earning a squeeze on the nose from your mom. She seemed to be enjoying herself, but you thought that might just be because she was amused by everyone else's reactions. You were in awe of the redwood trees. You were fascinated by the sensations surrounding you. You were in a good mood. You weren't as impressed as the others. You were embarrassed that the adults were being so touristy. You were fascinated by the sensations around you. Bird calls echoed all around you, and once or twice something would rustle in underbrush. You strained your eyes through the trees for any sign of wildlife, and you managed to catch a glimpse of a rabbit bounding through the foliage. You'd also decided on some casual nature walks rather than any serious hiking, and you strolled along at your own pace, taking in the scenery. Elizabeth sped up a little, smirking at Cove as she fell into place between the two of you, and immediately you could tell by her expression she was going to say something taunting. I can't believe our families are actually on vacation together. She threw her arms out, speaking with a genuine sense of bewilderment. I would have joked about something like this happening, but now I'm not sure I want to give them any more ideas. Cove smiled at her, even if it was a little awkwardly, and continued walking along. Just watch. Next year they'll be talking about their next new, amazing idea. She put on a fake voice, deeper than her own. We should just sell both our houses and move in together. Think of how much we'd save on the mortgage. It was clear that Elizabeth was being sarcastic. Cove simply shook his head, not really bothered by her. You suppose he was used to it by this point. But seriously, they do act like we're a single family just because we live across the street from each other. Elizabeth gave you and Cove a look. I know what's coming. Her eyes glinting with mischief as she leered at you. Maybe one day we will be related, legally anyway. She said it as though she was a gossipy old lady. Maybe. I guess you and me could get married, Elizabeth. That's cute. What? Me? Yeah, that way Nin would be my sibling-in-law. That would be fun. Elizabeth stuck her tongue out at Cove as if the very idea were ridiculous. Elizabeth, I can't believe you just proposed to Cove. Step off. You told her to cut it out already. Cove has a point. It wasn't a great comment. I'll marry you, Cove. You ignored Elizabeth. You were embarrassed. Sure. He could just as easily marry you. Well, actually, you need two people's consent for a marriage, and there is no way I'd ever agree to that. Really? Never? That's breaking my heart. Elizabeth poked her tongue out at the both of you, giving you a sour look. Sorry about my voices today. The allergy attack hit basically as soon as I started recording. It's getting ridiculous at this point. She walked ahead, obviously not getting the responses she was looking for, and you and Cove swapped amused looks. The day continued on with plenty to see and experience. You passed a few different activities that you would have liked to try out if you had the time, such as kayaking and rock climbing, but Ma said that we'd have to wait for another trip. That's a shame. There was a little stream during the walk that you sat beside and set out a picnic for lunch, nibbling on a selection of fruit, sandwiches, and chips. Various birds flew by overhead, and you made a game out of guessing the species that were hanging out in the trees nearby. You even managed to get a couple of them right, including the kingfisher that grabbed half of Cliff's sandwich. You were glad you got to do this in the end. You were disappointed to only have one day in the park. You thought the long trip wasn't worth only one day here. You had more fun hanging out in the RV. You hadn't had a good time with this trip. Glad you got to do this in the end. It was definitely a special experience, and one you'd remember for a long time to come. You smiled to yourself, committing the sights and sounds to memory. Your group made it back to camp just as the sun was setting in the sky, and the stars were appearing one by one. Everyone had enjoyed different parts of it most. You traded stories of what you thought while you were eating dinner, and then afterwards you pitched in to help clean up. You, along with Elizabeth and Cove, got to head back to the RV early and spend some time together while the parents stayed outside longer. It was nice to have the space to yourselves after the cramped journey there, and while Elizabeth had locked herself in the back room with her headphones, you and Cove were left in the main lounge area. You headed up the loft to relax on your own? No, we hung out with Cove. Might as well get comfortable. Who knows how long he'll be out for. You take a seat on the sofa while Ko sat down on the other end, tapping his fingers against his knees. You know, I hardly ever see you wearing a jacket, especially in summer, and it's a very nice jacket, too. Enjoy your break, Jack. No, it's been a little bit since you said that. Well, I hope you're enjoying your break, Jack. Oh, yeah. I like wearing as few layers as possible. It's easier that way. I'd rather be cold than extra hot, and it's kind of a pain to carry extra clothes around. My parents made me bring this jacket. I'm the same way. I don't mind either way. I love wearing layers. I love layers and accessories too. So fun facts, I guess. Outside of wearing my earrings, I don't really wear very many accessories. I just got a bracelet for Christmas that I've been trying to wear more. From my mother, because I love her. And it's a very nice bracelet. But other than that, I don't really... I guess I wear a hat. That's an accessory. Oh yeah, I have a large collection of hats that I wear every time I go out. So I guess I love layers and accessories too. Oh, also, I get cold very, very easily, so I tend to wear layers. That's probably why I have a closet almost filled to the brim at home. That is true. Ko smiled lightly at you and nodded. I've noticed. Why did that make me feel embarrassed? You changed the subject. You asked him what he liked to see others wear. Yeah, what do you like? Hey, what kind of things do you think are nice to see another person? Oh, got a message. It was not from a commissioner. I didn't need to check it. Dang. Ko's eyes widened at the question, and his defensive reply seemed to slip out before he had the chance to have a proper think about it. Nothing! Oh, Ko! Oh! That was funny. You paid it no mind. No, that was hilarious. You laughed out loud and Ko gave you a dry look. Come on, that's not what I meant. You compose yourself and sat up straighter, all traces of laughter disappearing from your face. Answer with what you do mean, then. Isn't there anything at all you think looks good when you see it on someone? Ko mumbled under his breath and he couldn't quite catch the words. He was having a difficult time with the subject. It was a topic that made him uncomfortable, so you let it go. You had a little fun, and that was enough. You changed the subject. You're not very good at these conversations, are you? I swear I won't make fun of you. I just thought it would be fun to talk about. I'm not... Well, normally I would, like, drop a subject that makes someone uncomfortable. I'm not really sure about this one. It doesn't seem... It's just asking him what clothes he likes, right? And now I'm, like, legitimately curious. So... I swear I won't make fun of you. That's not really it. Ko seemed pretty grumpy about your statement, but you weren't ready to give up so easily. Please? Ko sighed and looked down at his lap where he was fidgeting with his hands, still reluctant to give you an answer. Oh, okay. You made an unimpressed sound over how this was going. Are you sure? Fine, I guess. I kind of like ankle bracelets. Ankle bracelets? I haven't worn an ankle bracelet since that. Okay. Story time, I guess. When I was little, my mother and I used to wear ankle bracelets all the time just because, you know, mother and daughter. But, I broke hers and I haven't worn one since. I was playing with it when she wasn't wearing it. I felt really bad about that. I wonder if I even still have my old ankle bracelet around here somewhere. Ankle bracelets. Yeah, everyone can wear a pretty bracelet. Wrists are cool too, but they're pretty normal. There's something fun or You're 13. Don't say flirty. Flirty about ankle bracelets. It's more special or something. I don't know how to explain it. Cove brushed his knuckles against his cheek awkwardly, seemingly unsure where to go from there. Thanks for answering. I like them too. Huh, out of everything in the world, you picked that. So you think they're sexy? I do like them. I wish I wore them, but well, actually, maybe once I'm done with my current, like, side job, I can start wearing more jewelry. Oh, I can start painting my nails again! Cove smiled at you, happy to hear he wasn't the only one who felt that way. When he said nothing else, you took a moment to gather your own thoughts. You had to get an anklet on ASAP. Maybe you'd wear your anklets more now. Maybe you wouldn't wear your anklets so often. You thought about buying an anklet of your own. You were happy to hear more about Cove, but it didn't really change anything. Maybe I'll wear mine more now. You had a couple of different ones at home. With this new knowledge, you might slip them into your daily outfits in the future. Oh, yeah. I would. Cove looked away again, feeling awkward about this. You gave him an understanding look, and soon enough he was smiling like normal again. Well, now you have to answer too. What do you like for another person? Muscles, pretty hair, glasses, blue eyes. Okay, well, 2 of these things aren't things you wear, which is not the answer to the question. I'm not even sure pretty hair counts, so glasses. Cove chuckled as though you'd said something highly amusing. Good luck. I hope you find someone. Dick. With that, the topic abruptly dropped off. Cove officially had no more to say on it, and as we all know, if Cove has nothing more to say, he drops the conversation like a bad habit. The parents all arrived soon after, each of them climbing into the RV and finding some place to sit down and rest their legs. Elizabeth, having heard the commotion, came out from the room for the first time since arriving and joined you all. You spent the evening chatting and playing a few games, enjoying the last evening of the trip together. Bedtime arrived within the blink of an eye. As the group hunkered down for the night, your mom did a final round to make sure nothing had been left behind. Alright. She explained that Cliff was going to start driving early in the morning, like on the first day, but would be letting everyone else in the group sleep. There wouldn't be need for all of them to get up. Now was the time to check you hadn't left anything outside. You, as well as everyone else, were confident you had it all packed up inside the RV, which meant it was time to get some rest before the journey home tomorrow. You know, if it were me, I would have used this as an excuse to go out and look at the sky. Your mom and Elizabeth said goodnight, heading to the back room while you climbed up to the loft. Cove and his family got situated below in the previously set arrangement. You tried to get comfortable as a million thoughts were running around your mind. It was hard to believe that the trip was practically over, and before you knew it, you'd be back in your own bed at home. You enjoyed this mini adventure. You thought the trip had been okay. You felt the trip was a waste of— No, we enjoyed this. It was short, that was for sure, but you got to see and do so much more during your time here. All in all, it was a nice break away from home. The minutes ticked by silently. It didn't take long for the soft snores of Cliff and Kyra to drift up to you. You were asleep now. They were asleep now. You wondered if Cove was still awake and decided to poke your head out from the loft to find out. You blinked through the dark. Looking down the hall, you noticed Cove was laying on his back, his eyes staring straight up at the ceiling. His seafoam hair was spread out on his sleeping bag. He must have felt you watching him, because suddenly his eyes locked on yours. It was difficult to see much in the dim light, but you could make out the crooked smile on his face well enough. You grinned back at him. You made a silly face. You waved at him. You made a silly face. Cove rolled his eyes at you, or at least you thought he did. You then gestured for him to come over. You then went back to trying to sleep. You then decided to have fun quietly. I don't want to wake them. If I decide to have fun, will he still come over? I'm gonna save here. Actually, I won't need to. I can see the payoff of my thing and then reverse. Then decided to have fun quietly. You buried yourself under the blanket and pulled up your game console. That's not what I wanted. You then gestured for him to come over. Cove looked unsure about it, but you were happy to see him slowly start to sit up anyway. His sleeping bag rustled as he moved, though he tried to go slow and froze up like a deer in headlights every time he made a sound, watching his parents for any sign of movement. Eventually, he managed to maneuver around his sleeping dad and make it to the ladder, standing on the bottom rung where he looked up at you and whispered, "What?" "Hi." "Oh, it was nothing. Good night. How are you doing?" You invited him up to the loft. I'm torn between hi, oh, it was nothing, and inviting him up. I want to be annoying so bad. But I also want to be nice, because I don't like sleeping on the floor. I can't imagine it's comfortable. Well, I mean, for some people it is. I personally cannot find it comfortable. Let's invite him. Want to come up? His eyes widened just so. You could only tell because he'd come up to where you were. Cove glanced behind him quickly at his sleeping parents before turning back to you. Okay. You broke out into a groan and scooched back as far as you could, making space for Cove to crawl in. He was very tall, so it wasn't a great fit for him, but he managed to squeeze himself in. Even if you weren't exactly tall, the loft was still a tight squeeze with the two of you in there together. Aww. You laid down next to each other on your sides, face to face. He got under the blanket a bit. One of his arms was nestled under his head for comfort. The other had nowhere to go and was rested alongside his chest on the floor of the loft. Cove spoke to you softly. So, what am I doing here? Good question. I don't know, it's just... When I was 13... I didn't really have many sleepovers, I guess. I think I slept on... No, actually, there was one person I had a sleepover with every week, but that was back in kindergarten, so it doesn't count for this. But when I was 13, I stopped really sleeping over at people's houses. Overall, I didn't really get to do it much in general, but... I don't know, I feel like it's better if we're all together. I don't know, thought we could hang out? You can sleep here instead of on the floor. You can sleep here. Cove raised an eyebrow, not having expected for you to bring up the topic again. You're still thinking about that? You don't have to worry about me that much, Nin, but thanks. It's okay. It isn't a big deal for us both to be in the loft, right? Yeah, it's not some huge thing. We've shared a million times by now, and usually they're the ones encouraging us. Cove gestured in the direction of the parents and you nodded in agreement. They'd always tried to put you and Cove together ever since you were little. I wonder how much trouble we'll be in if we get caught. We're definitely getting caught, though. But it's okay. It wouldn't be nearly as much as he would have been in if your moms found out you stuck in my room for the night at the start of Why are we saying that? He winced just imagining it. I still can't believe I did that and did get caught. It was a very dramatic morning. You could easily picture his frantic escape in your mind's eye. You're kind of a troublemaker, aren't you, Cove? I encouraged him. No, I don't think so. Cove trailed off and he seemed to be lost in his own thoughts. Hey, do you remember the very first time I slept over at your house? He laughed quietly and nodded, the memory coming back to mind so vividly. A smile grew on his face. Yeah, you left early. I left in the middle of the night. I hated being in a different place back then. Now I fall asleep in your house when I'm not supposed to because I couldn't help it. I'm sorry it was like that. I just couldn't take any more changes when I was little. You encouraged him, you comforted him, you teased him. Comforted. You don't have to apologize, that wasn't your fault. He smiled at Cove, showing that it wasn't a problem, and he gratefully returned with one of his own. You spent the rest of the night smooshed up in the little loft together, whispering about your past memories and trying not to giggle too loud at the silly things you've gotten up together over the years. Up to together. Eventually, the chatting trailed off, and when you noticed Cove had drifted off to sleep, you followed soon after. Yeah, we're getting caught, because how is he gonna get off without Cliff? When you woke up the next morning, it was to the rumble of the RV as it traveled the long journey home. You noticed quickly as you weren't as warm that you weren't as warm as you'd been during the night. When you checked next to you, Cove was gone. Oh, okay, he got up before Cliff got up. Blinking sleepily, you peeked over the edge of the cloth to find out where he'd gone. Maybe he had snuck back to a spot on the floor during the night? However, you soon noticed him, sitting on the couch, talking quietly with his mom. Oh, no, we were caught. His head hung in embarrassment. Your movement gave you away, and Kyra suddenly looked up and caught your eye. Yeah, there was no way we were getting out of that unless he somehow woke up before all of the parents. She simply smiled amusedly at you, and it was obvious what happened. Cove hadn't gotten away with it. They found him there in the loft, and then you woke up while he was trying to explain. You knew it was going to be a long, long time before you lived this one down. If you ever did. Soon your moms and Elizabeth emerged from their room, dressed and ready for the day of travel. You spent most of the day hanging out together in the RV, savoring the last few hours of vacation. Kyra suggested a few different travel games she used to play with Cove when he was younger, and you all had a great time competing against each other. Oh my gosh, it's already been 40 minutes since we started this. A little later in the day, you tried to talk to Cove about what happened in the loft, but he simply apologized and changed the subject. Apologize for what? I invited you! It was a bit too much for him to try speaking on, especially right now. You understood. When the RV finally pulled onto your street, it was well into the night, and you were looking forward to crawling in your own bed after the last few days away. Everyone else must have been feeling the same, because it was mutually agreed that unpacking and cleaning the RV would wait until morning. Once home again, you went straight to your room and dropped on your bed, shoes and all. No, I didn't. You were happy to be in your own bed. I will never get in my bed with my shoes. You were happy to be in your own bed. It felt weird to be alone. It felt good to be alone. You wished you were still on the trip. You missed being your Cove. Man, how much of a simp do I want to be? I am simping pretty hard for Cove. Not gonna lie. I think he's adorable. But do I want my character to admit that right now? It probably would feel everything but wishing I was still on the trip. As much as I love trips, there's always a point where like being home has more novelty than being out, you know? Let's be a simp. You missed being your Cove. The two of you had basically been living together for 3 days. It was nice. But you knew that it wouldn't be the last time the two of you would spend time together, and that thought comforted you. With those last few thoughts drifting through your mind, it wasn't long before you dozed off to sleep. Tomorrow, life would go on like normal. Oh, okay. I wanted to end this at 12, but that whole segment took 40 minutes. Which is way longer than most of the vignettes we've done so far. Alright, on to dinner and family. Sunlight shone through the windows as you sat in your living room, your home phone pressed against your ear. Cove was on the other end. It'd been shaping up to be an ordinary day like any other. It was a day like any other day. Until Cove had called unexpectedly. He sounded unusually nervous greeting you. You listened silently as he kept talking, his words stilted. So, I was just, wondering, do you want to come over to my house for, dinner tonight? The question came out strangely, almost like he'd rehearsed it a few times beforehand. He probably did. You are a mess and I love you. Your eyes widened a little. You hadn't expected this to be the reason behind the call. Yeah, I'll go. I can't. You kept listening. Yeah, I'll go. It was, oh. I don't need an explanation to go over to your house for dinner. We're friends. Oop. It was, huh? Oh. It seemed that Cove still had more to say and you just interrupted him. Oops. Cool. Well, he stumbled for a bit, trying to gather his thoughts again. My mom and dad, they really want you to be here if your parents don't have a problem with it. They asked me to ask you. You took a moment to think. Dinner at home would be quiet and uneventful today. If you really wanted to, you could go to Cove's instead. Cove spoke up again, breaking your thought train. His voice was softer than before. Also, I want you to be there too. Well, how could I possibly say no to that? Can you come over, I mean? Yeah, I can come. I'll have to ask my mom and get back to you. No, I can't make it. Why am I the only one invited? Or did you mean the whole family? I'll have to ask my mom and get back to you. Okay, tell me when you can. He sounded noticeably relieved by your response. Was you coming over for a dinner today? That's serious? Now that I think about it, he's pretty awkward with his parents, right? So having to have dinner with them every day must be kind of hell for him. He spoke to you for a little while longer to explain what time to come over and other details and then hung up. And that was that for now anyway. He called Ma right afterward and she picked up on the third ring. It wasn't a long conversation. When you asked to go to the Holden house for dinner, she was more than happy to give you permission for it. No problems there. Ma wasn't one to complain about you spending time with Cove. Cove got a quick call from you afterwards, so he knew for sure that you would attend the dinner. Then he said your goodbyes and went on with the afternoon. Soon enough, the sun dipped out of the sky and evening came. It was time for you to head to Cove's house. After letting Elizabeth know you were leaving, she didn't look away from the TV, just grunted. You made the small journey across the street. You knocked a couple times on a heavy door to their condo. As you waited for an answer, you found yourself contemplating being a guest while both of Cove's parents were there. It was exciting, you were apprehensive. The idea made you curious. You didn't think it would be especially interesting. You couldn't say you were thrilled. You know, all of that? Exciting doesn't necessarily mean it was good. Just means it makes my heart beat faster. I do get along okay with his parents, though. So, I don't think it could be too bad. So, I'm curious because I don't know why they insisted I come over today. You wondered why they decided to invite you out of the blue. Maybe you'd find out later tonight. You didn't get too much time with your thoughts, though. The door opened soon enough. Cove's mom, Kyra, stood in the frame, smiling warmly at you. Hey, Anin, welcome. Please come on in. She opened the door wider. Oh, Halloween pillows. Cove's house is nice. She opened the door wider and moved to make room. You stepped inside, allowing her to shut it behind you. Thanks so much for coming over. I know it was kind of last second. Thank you for having me. Of course, just make yourself at home. It's not my home, but I've been given permission to say that. Hey, Nin, welcome to our humble abode. You jerked your head toward the sound of Mr. Holden's voice. He looked at you briefly from the kitchen with his back turned and a large spoon in his hand. Hope you're hungry, because I'm whipping up a lot of tasty stuff. True to his word, you heard something sizzling on the stove. You closed your eyes and inhaled. It smelled spicy and savory. With Mr. Holden busy and Cove nowhere to be seen, it was just you and Kyra. She gave a wry smile. He sure is. Well, I've been barred from cooking the entire time I'm staying here. Can you believe that? She nudged you with an elbow. Mr. Holden scoffed good-naturedly and then spoke from over his shoulder. You're on vacation, Kyra. You need to accept that already. She yelled back, amusement obvious on her face and in her tone. People still cook when they're on vacation. Everyone's got to eat. It's not like I'm some celebrity who can go out for every meal or hire a private chef. Well, in this house, you're a VIP. Kyra smiled and shook her head quietly. Then she turned to face you once more. Sorry about that, Nin. Here I was trying to strike up a conversation with you, and Cliff just had to butt in. I don't butt in. She eyed him, chuckling in disbelief. He wasn't exactly disproving her point with that. Kyra leaned over to whisper to you. It's okay. He likes to be included. But since Clifford insisted on cooking all by himself, he'll have to wait. The two of us can chat. Her next question continued to be said in a hushed tone, just to be safe. So, how are you doing? I'm doing good. I'm good. Things are okay. I'm not really sure. You didn't reply. I'm doing good. That's what I like to hear. She opened her mouth to say something more, but some lightly pounding footsteps caught your attention. You checked to see Cove emerge from the hall a few moments later. He might have heard all the commotion and left his room to see what was going on. He quickly took stock of the situation. Nin, you made it. Thanks for coming. Cove's voice was unnaturally loud, as if he thought you wouldn't be able to hear him from where you were, only a few feet away. Nervous. Hi, Cove. You doing okay? Yeah, I'm fine. He didn't sound convincing at all. You narrowed your eyes suspiciously, but didn't call him out on it. If you could talk to him alone tonight, maybe you'd ask him what was going on then. It was when you glanced away from Cove that you spotted his parents watching the two of you interact. Cove noticed her stares too, meeting them with narrowed eyes. Are we having dinner now? Not yet, bud. I'm still cooking. Alright, I'm gonna go back to my room. As he turned to leave, he bent his head to the side to face you. You coming? The question was quiet, but you heard it clearly. You smiled, pleased that he'd asked, and nodded in the affirmative. Cove turned fully and made his way down the hall. Have fun, you two. We'll call you when food's ready to go. With that, you followed after Cove. The two of you made your way down the hall. This was the first time you were invited to see Cove's room. You'd visited Cove's room before, but only rarely. Going over to Cove's room was a standard occurrence for you nowadays. How familiar do I want to be? Even now, I don't, invite my best friends into my room. It's a big step for me to let someone come in my room. I think we've visited Cove's room before, but only rarely. Cove got to the door first, opening it and stepping inside. You joined him. There was a mat on the room in front of the door. As you stepped over the threshold into your room, you felt the crunch of sand beneath your feet. The sensation was nothing new to you, of course. Cove constantly came back to his room covered in sand, not bothering to clean himself off at the front door, and got it all over his personal space. He surfs. Also, Cove, what the heck? Sweep. That's just how he was, a little bit of a mess. Oh, he has fish. You hadn't heard Mr. Holden ever scold him for it, not like your moms would have if you'd done it. You can sit wherever you want. Takes a seat on his bookshelf. Cove himself took a seat at the edge of his large bed, looking like the picture of comfort, and left you to decide. You didn't sit anywhere, you sat down on the chair, you sat next to Cove on his bed. I'm not going to push him. You sat down on the chair. There was a desk chair in the room for a reason, after all. You walked over and rolled it out, taking a seat on it. It was stiff against your butt and creaked each time you shifted. He definitely used his bed space more often than this. Well, too late to complain now, you just have to deal with it. With the silence growing, your gaze began to drift. You stared at the bright fish swimming in the tank. There were a bunch of them floating to and fro in the open space. They stood out starkly against the green aquarium plants. How long have you had those fish? My dad bought them for me not very long after I moved here. I guess it's been years now. Wow, that's a long time. He peered carefully into the tank. The fish looked to be doing well. He must take good care of them. Most of them were small, but there was one especially big one. What are their names? I don't name them. Not really. He lifted an eyebrow at that. He continued the explanation sheepishly. Mostly I just call them things based on what they look like. Squirt for the small one, Tangerine for the really orange one, that sort of thing. I've had a lot of fish and I'm not that good at coming up with names. You found that funny, surprising, relatable. I'm the type who likes to name everything. Surprising. After all these years, he still had trouble naming his fish? That sounded easy to you. He should prepare some ahead of time if he's planning on getting more. Oh, a couple of them have other types of names. He pointed to a small orangish red fish. It was minding its own business away from the others. My dad named her Dreamcatcher, and the other one's named Mark. Mom came up with that one. Mark! Cove smiled to himself, his eyes reflecting the glow from the tank. You let other people name your fish? Yeah, it's nice. You're gonna ask me to name a fish, aren't you? He then turned to you, tilting his face to the side. There was a considering look on his face. Do you want to name one? Yeah, I do. Can I? No thanks. Can I? His smile grew a little at your interest. Sure. There's a few who don't have names right now, the newer ones. You can pick what you want to name. He pointed out the recent acquisitions to you. How many fish do you have? The first was the smallest fish in the tank. It was completely orange and zipped all over the place, running laps around the others. The second was slightly bigger and red. Its tail was dotted with black spots, which almost resembled freckles. The last fish was the biggest one. Its multicolored scales ruffled under the bright light of the tank as it slowly made its way across the vast expanse. You went with... I want the freckled one. The smallest, medium, or biggest? Medium, please. Cove nodded at your answer, waiting on you to decide on a suitable name. You watched the fish you chose closely. As you did, a name eventually came to you. Frank, Sunbeam, Gil, Nin, Cove, or I can type something in. I'm typing in. So you guys know how I've been like really obsessed with Yu-Gi-Oh lately. Actually, you know what? I think I know what I want to go for. It's not technically a Yu-Gi-Oh thing, although there is a card for it. I'm gonna do Thor. Alright, it's Thor. With that, his attention moved from you to the tank. He peered fondly at it and its inhabitants. He smiled proudly at Thor as it swam through the tendrils of the plants, disappearing then reappearing soon after. You know, I'm not allowed to have pets in my house. Not even I can't have... I want cat! The corners of Cove's lip turned down at that. That doesn't sound fair. It's not like fish would make a mess of your house or anything. You just gotta take care of their tank and feed them and they'll be okay. Right? My mom can be strict over the weirdest things sometimes. I don't mind it too much. I get it. No, that's weird. Not even a fish? They trust Elizabeth and me to go around the neighborhood alone, but they won't let us have a pet? It doesn't make sense. Maybe when you're older, they'll let you? I don't know, they seem pretty against it. Your current conversation brought to mind a memory from years ago. You launched into it without any warning, earning you a brief, confused look from Cove. Oh, don't, come off it, man. You're constantly doing this, or at least you were when you were a kid. Well, you're still a kid. You were when you were 8. One time, Elizabeth came back from playing at the beach and just shut herself in her room. She only came down for food and then she ran back upstairs straight after. It was kind of weird. My mom didn't think much of it at first. But then that night, Mom went up to her room to say goodnight and started screaming. Mom and I ran over to see what happened. Lizzie had this huge lizard in her arms. Cove's eyebrows rose at that and he leaned forward in interest. A lizard? Where'd that come from? Elizabeth said she saw it half buried in the sand and didn't know what it was. Then she pulled it out and got the answer, so she brought it home. She hid the lizard in her room for most of the day because she wanted to keep it. Mom and Mom were not happy. They worried about putting it out during the night, but she was going to have to let it go in the morning. Lizzie was really upset. She did bring it back to the beach eventually, but she wouldn't talk to anyone for days. When she did get over it, it was almost like it never happened. He laughed, thinking back to that time. Elizabeth had always been stubborn, but when she was younger, she forgot grudges quickly. Now it wasn't so easy. Cove had been quiet for most of the story, apart from the reveal of the lizard. He had a thoughtful look on his face. I can't even imagine what it'd be like to have a sibling. You gave serious thought to the statement before you told him. It's fun. There are ups and downs. You're lucky to be an older child. It's a nice idea in general, but my sister is Elizabeth. I don't know how to explain what it's like. There are ups and downs. It's fun to have her there when she wants to be there, but now Elizabeth barely feels like hanging out with me. Cove pursed his lips at the words, considering them quietly for a while. That's interesting. I think your family is cool. He didn't have much else to say, although while on the topic of your family, you considered your relationship... No, though while on the topic, blah, you considered your relationship with your moms too. They were absolutely the best. You got along with your moms. You thought they were okay. You found them difficult to deal with. I got along with my moms. You had disagreements with them, but at the end of the day, you loved them and they loved you. That was really what mattered. A thought struck you and your attention suddenly settled back on Cove. Yeah, my moms might not let Elizabeth and me have any pets and stuff, but at least they never tried to pay someone to be my friend. Why would I say that? You grinned over at Cove. It'd been years since he found out about your first meeting with his dad. It was easy to joke about these days. Okay, as long as it's easy to joke about, because for me that would still feel sore. Cove tossed his head back in an overly dramatic way, sighing heavily. I almost forgot about that. Really? No, not really. I'll never be able to forget that actually happened for the rest of my life. It's gonna humiliate me forever. I'm really sorry about what happened, Cove. But I'm sorry since I'm gonna bring it up forever. Yeah, I get why that'd be embarrassing. You laughed, you stayed quiet. And I'm sorry since I'm gonna bring it up forever. Maybe I'll offer to pay you $20 so you stop reminding me about it. You barked out a laugh, not expecting Cove to join in on the kidding. A tiny amused smile curled along his lips at your reaction. Time passed, but you didn't really notice. The two of you were busy making plans for the rest of the summer and chatting about your respective days. Eventually, you heard a muffled holler from different parts of the house. You and Cove raised your heads in unison. Time for dinner. Cove watched the firmly shut door he'd been locked behind for most of the night, but he didn't make a move to get up from the bed. You couldn't see his face, so you didn't know what expression he was wearing. I'm glad you came. Cove peeked at you. Cove peeked back at you from the side. It's been awkward. I get that. It's been hard on you, huh? You felt sympathetic toward him. You didn't know what he was going through, but you cared about him. Cove said nothing else and remained sat where he was. Now would be a good time to ask him why his parents so suddenly wanted you to come over. Is there a reason they wanted me to come over tonight? He kept quiet. Is there a reason? It hasn't been awkward for just me. Sometimes it gets like this when no one else is around, but now you're here. I hadn't considered that, but it sort of made sense in a way. There was another shout from outside, too muffled to actually know the words, but you could imagine what they were. Let's go. Cove finally got up, lumbering away with his shoulders sagged. You followed after him. Together, the two of you made your way back to the living room. As you expected, Cove's parents were politely waiting for you at the kitchen table beside the windows overlooking the back of the house. Food had been prepared and set. Mr. Holden beamed at you as you and Cove took your places. I hope everyone's hungry. I cooked up a feast. I know I am. Yeah. Cove's mumbled response was nearly as upbeat as theirs. His parents didn't notice, or they pretended not to. Mr. Holden instead looked at you, grinning. Let's all just take a moment to thank our special guest. Let's all just take a moment to thank our special guest for being with us here tonight. I'm so glad you were able to make it, Nin, and on such short notice, too. You thanked them back for inviting you. You didn't say anything. You felt awkward. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thank you both for inviting me.
All right.
Well, that's it. Everyone please dig in. You can help yourselves to the food. Upon his encouragement, you looked over at the meal spread in front of you. It was a large garden salad in the center, surrounded by a variety of Mexican dishes. There are lots of sides and optional sauces to add. You made careful note of the dishes that had meat. Thankfully, it didn't seem to be all of them. The three other people here were omnivores. Cove's dad might have made some of the dishes especially for you, since he was aware of your vegetarianism. You were very happy. You could work with this. You weren't exactly a fan. This kind of just surprised you. Oh gosh, I didn't go blow my nose. I am back. I'm gonna need to draw like a sprite of my Sona suffering from allergies. Work with this. You could work with this. You didn't mind Mexican food. Mom loved it, so you ate it as a family often. In a way, it made your first dinner at the Holden house feel a bit more normal. Utensils and plates scraped and clinked together as the group began filling their plates. Cliff, could you pass the salsa verde? Of course. Thank you. Let me just say, you really outdid yourself tonight. I'm so jealous. Jealous of what? Your cooking's nothing to sneeze at, Kyra. Ko's parents made small talk, filling the silence with what seemed to be barely any effort. You chimed in as well. Did it take you a long time to cook all this, Mr. Holden? Oh, not at all. Sure, this is more than I usually make for me and Cove, but I enjoyed every second of it. Might have gone faster if you had some help, though. Cove's mom grumbled, but it was lighthearted. Mr. Holden chuckled and shook his head. Not this again. I make the rules here, and I say guests don't cook. Even when they're staying for literal weeks?
Come on.
Even then. Everything looked great, Dad. As always. Thanks, Sport. Glad you think so. Sport. Cove smiled. It was genuine, even if it was strained at the corners. Brief silence is interspersed with small talk. You piled some food on your plate, waiting for your turn if someone was serving themselves a dish that you had your eyes on. Once the food had been divided and things settled down, Cove's parents started talking again. Now then. You sat up in your seat when you noticed they were both looking at you. How's everything been over at your house? Are your moms well? You been keeping busy this summer? Or maybe you're just trying to take it easy during the break. You felt overwhelmed by the sudden rush of questions. You were more than happy to answer. You were surprised, but you didn't mind the interest. You felt uncomfortable with the attention. I want to... Okay, that is overwhelming. He did just give me like 5 questions at once. But, I don't want Code to feel nervous. So, in this situation, I try my best to at least appear pleased. You were surprised, but you didn't mind the interest. You hadn't expected so many questions and all at once. Still, what else was there to talk about apart from how the summer was going? You answered how things were at your house. You told them how your moms were doing. You mentioned things you'd done this summer. I'll tell you guys how my moms are. My moms are great. My moms are fine. They're the same as always. You should ask my parents about it. Oh my gosh. Moms are fine. Just kind of busy with work and stuff. That's nice. The doing fine part, not the busy with work part, obviously. How things are at my house. It's been good. Is what you said, but you didn't mean it. It's alright. Not that great. I'd rather not talk about it. It's been good.
Fantastic.
Oh, that's wonderful. Things we've done that summer. Not sure where to start. There's so much that happened. You should know what I've been up to since so much has included your family. Haven't really done much. You should know. Mr. Holden laughed loud and snorted. You caught him off guard with that. A fair point. And that was that for your question answering. Kyra nodded along. You could tell she was actually listening to the words you were saying. She was trying to include you, not humor you. Did you know, Cliff? Nina's really into fashion. Mr. Holden's face lit up and he stopped eating so he could lean forward, his arms braced against the table. Oh, that's right. Very cool. It's just a hobby. Pretty serious about it. Oh, it's not a big thing. It's just a hobby. There's nothing wrong with that. It's good to do things just for fun. Everyone needs a hobby. I've been thinking of picking up wood carving myself. You couldn't tell how serious he was being behind that declaration. Thanks. Cove's parents were definitely the encouraging type, but you could already tell that much about them. Yeah, I mean, look at them. There was a lull in conversation as everyone focused their attention on their respective plates. You noted not for the first time that Cove's parents were the ones guiding the conversation. You wondered if you should break the silence this time. You brought up your own topic. You left coming up with a conversation topic to them. Let's try our best. You brought up your own topic. I also like other things. Would you like to tell us more?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. They looked genuinely eager for you to keep talking, so you did. The rest of the dinner continued just like that, with light conversation as you ate your meals. Eventually, all the dishes on the kitchen table were pretty much gone. Kyra sat down her fork and rested her arms at her sides, letting loose a satisfied sigh. Her plate was completely empty. That was delish. Thank you for your culinary creations, Cliff. Mr. Holden was like a flower soaking up the rays of the sun. He beamed, flattered by the praise. You ate way too much. You ate until you were satisfied. You tried not to eat too much, even though it was good. Ate until I was satisfied. It taking you some time to finish it all, but eventually you cleared your plate. Cove successfully kept his presence to a minimum for the full meal. He was slumped over, now even toying with his silverware. His parents practically only talked to you. Most attempts to entice him to join the conversation failed. It wasn't typical for him to say so little. He at least tried to participate. You didn't get much time to contemplate Cove's situation because your attention was taken by Mr. Holden pointedly clearing his voice. Not to sound like a broken record, but thanks for coming, Nin. I'm glad we finally got the chance to have you over for a real dinner. What? Did I hear that right? This is the first time Nin has ever had dinner here? Why in the world hadn't you invited them over sooner? Cove was always the one going over to Nin's house until now. I mean, how was I supposed to reject the generous offers of the Onion family to host my kid? Kyra shook her head, but the amused smile she was sporting told you she wasn't actually mad. Sky, honestly. The three of you looked over at Cove in unison, his small smile being more than enough to get the focus on him after his small sound. Being it more than enough to get the focus on him after his silence, but now he'd stopped fiddling with his fork. Would it be alright for Nin to stay over, like, for the night? Aww, that would be fun, but we've already stayed over illegally twice. He shot you a shy glance then, smiling a little. If you're cool with that. Mr. Holden's shoulders stiffened. He sat up straighter, eyes darting back and forth between you and Cove. His mouth opened, but not a peep came out. You'd never seen Cove's dad say no to him before, but this was different than the usual request. It wasn't so simple and Mr. Holden was lost. Yeah, I can't imagine asking that, Cove. You have... like, I mean, I know you're pretty nervous and awkward, but right now you got balls of steel. And Cove's mom reached out and took a hold of his shirt collar. She pulled him closer. She glanced at you before leaning in and bringing a hand up in front of their faces. The two adults whispered seriously to each other. Cove's eyes opened wider. He leaned forward as if that would help him overhear their parents' conversation. Mr. Holden kept gesturing with his hands while Kyra made sure he didn't get too far away with all his movements. Every now and then, both of them would watch you and Cove out of the corner of their eyes. It didn't seem like they were fighting to you. They looked more like some kind of tiny sports team having a private huddle. That's interesting. After a bit, they broke the powwow. They moved back to sit properly in their chairs. You snuck a look at Cove. He stared at them expectantly. You were eager to hear their verdict, too. Well, Kyra and I think that should be fine, but... He lifted a finger dramatically, his brows racing as he met Cove's gaze and then your own. We'll have to talk with Nin's parents to make sure they'd be comfortable with it. If they are, we can arrange for a sleepover to happen on a different night when everyone is more prepared. If Nin's folks don't like the idea, there's nothing we can do. He finished the mini speech with a wide shrug using his full arms. He also checked out Kyra from the corner of his eye and gave her a crooked smile. She nodded approvingly and grinned back. You thought she saw her give him a thumbs up, but her hand was partially blocked by the table. They looked so pleased with themselves over the answer, but they just passed the actual decision on whether it was alright or not to someone else. Namely, your parents. If this was a sports game, they would have punted the ball away. Cove hung his head, deflated. He'd been hoping you could stay over today, not some hypothetical time in the future. You gave him some words of encouragement. You patted him on the back. Psst, I'll sneak the phone into my room tonight. Hey, you could always sneak into my room again out loud? I'm not saying that. You pouted about it, too. I'll sneak the phone into my room tonight. If you get your home phone too, then we can still talk, but I'll be back at home. Cove's eyes sparkled at the suggestion. It may or may not end up being possible, but it was worth trying. With that, dinner finally came to an end. Mr. Holden stood up from the table and began collecting empty plates. Cove was asked to help out, which he did with little fuss. Kyra tried to lend a hand as well, however Mr. Holden didn't let her. It was seen she was barred from cleaning as well as cooking. You weren't allowed to chip in either since you were there as a declared guest of honor. Then the meal was over, the night wasn't. It looked like you weren't going home yet after all. You were just asked to wait on the couch. You were asked to wait on the couch. While Cove and his dad were cleaning up the mess, Kyra disappeared down the hall after shooting you awake. She's gonna go call my parents. It was a bit strange sitting by herself while everyone else had something to do. Luckily, you weren't alone for too long. After a couple of minutes... Oh no, cards, dang. Cove's mom returned with a deck of cards in hand. She strolled into the room confidently while shuffling. So, who's up for a few rounds? Cove and his dad looked over their shoulder at the question. They were mutually intrigued by the cards in her hands. She beamed at their expressions and stepped further into the living room, ignoring the couch as she sat cross-legged on the floor by the coffee table. She turned to you and gestured at the space beside her, smiling invitingly. You accepted and followed her lead. The living room carpet was soft, though the hardwood floor underneath could definitely still be felt. Kyra did an overhand shuffle while she waited for the others to finish their tasks. The smile had yet to leave her lips. This is going to be good. You're excited, nervous, bored, annoyed, or enthusiastic. Or enjoying her enthusiasm. You enjoyed her enthusiasm. Cove's mom was funny, upbeat, and easygoing. You leaned closer to watch her expertly shuffle the cards. It didn't take much longer for Cove and his dad to wrap things up enough to call it good. Cove's dad disappeared first, followed closely behind... Cove's dad appeared, first, followed closely behind by Cove. Mr. Holden rubbed his hands together in anticipation. Alright, I'm ready. As he took a seat across from you on the floor, you noticed that Cove hadn't joined him. He went straight down the hall instead without even a word. You stared on confused as he disappeared through his bedroom door. Cove's parents didn't look concerned at the stunt. Kyra nonchalantly split the deck into two and ruffled the halves together while offering an explanation of sorts. Cove doesn't keep his wallet with him when at home. He puts it away. What? Cove quickly returned to the living room, a black wallet in his hand. He took a place at the foot of the table with the rest of you. You blinked as Cove unzipped his wallet. You all use real money on card games with family? While you sat there, your hands idle in your lap, the three-shot looks at one another and size each other up. That's right, $5 per round per person. Winner takes all. Go big or go home. Oh, are you planning on kicking into the curb? Or do you intend on donating to the Guest of Honor's pot, Mr. High Roller? Mr. Holden narrowed his eyes and leaned back against the side of the couch, completely at ease. If Nin wants to play, I'll fund their way in. Don't you worry about that. He rested an arm across the top of the knee that he'd propped up. Cove's dad was acting slick in a way you'd never seen before. You appreciated his offer. You joked that he shouldn't be so confident. You felt awkward about the situation. His sureness was pretty appealing. You ignored it. You joked that he shouldn't be so confident. Are you sure? Adding me could be spelling your doom. Right you are, Nin. I hope you can back that attitude up. I know I can, Kyra. And I know I can, Kyra. You can let me pay for Nin. They're my friend. Mr. Holden grinned with a chuckle. Alright, bud, I concede. You're too polite for me. Well, you've got your ticket. Interested in throwing in? He glanced around. This seemed like serious business. In response to your consternation, Kyra softened her competitive smile. Don't worry too much. We'll probably just do some rounds of Go Fish tonight. No biggie. What do you think? You joined in. I'd love to play. Mr. Holden gave you a big thumbs up while Cove nodded firmly back. You were really good at Go Fish. You were decent at Go Fish. You left it all to luck. You were always bad at Go Fish. I'm not bad at Go Fish. So I'll say that I'm decent. Sometimes you won, sometimes you lost. You like to think you weren't bad at it, though. Fantastic. We'll play for however long everyone wants to keep going, or until people start running out of cash but are still refusing to quit while they're behind. Speaking for yourself, I see. With a laugh, Kyra nudged you using an elbow, then motioned towards the other two with her chin. Don't be fooled by their soft faces. These boys are sharks. In reaction to her words, Mr. Holden smirked, and Cove's eyebrows became more angled. Kyra's phrasing made you think back to when you were young, specifically of Mr. Holden's favorite shark pants that he used to wear all the time. Perhaps they'd been a fit for him in ways you didn't know of. You could feel tension in the air. Cove and his parents glued their eyes to one another, and then all placed $5 bills in an empty space in front of them. Cove dropped an extra one for you, giving a tiny smile after he did. Once this was done, Kyra began dealing out cards to everybody. It was time to begin. The first round came and went quickly, with the group getting into the groove of things. You won right away, which means you had money to keep playing the second round. You're a natural! Nicely done. You better keep those wits about you for the next round, though. As the night went on, so did the games. Mr. Holden would jokingly shake his fist whenever someone other than him got a pair. Kyra acted as a news anchor, reporting on every move everyone made by speaking into her curled fist. Cope was still a few words, but now it was because he was focused on the game instead of being overcome with awkwardness. Most of the time, he even spotted a smile on his lips. You won quite a few games to your delight. You had a hefty money pile on your side of the table. You must regret paying Nin's way now, huh? No way. Nin might be beating you, but they're also beating you two. Cove turned toward you and smiled, looking pleased at your ability to match his mom and dad. You grinned at him, touched by a speedy comeback. It became clear that where the money went in the moment didn't really matter. They ended up giving it back to one another in other ways, not just through rounds of cards. You sat back, looking over the scene. A tiny smile grew on your face. Cove's family was pretty cool, you thought. You're glad you got this chance to come over and spend time with the three of them. Alright. These ones have been longer than the ones in step 1, so I'm thinking we might end up actually ending it out wave, because I only have 40 minutes left, and that one I've been recording for an hour 30 now. Alright. Yeah, let's say one more. Family. The sun warmed your skin from its place in the sky, and you closed your eyes, enjoying the mix of the heat with a pleasant breeze that drifted past you. You and Lee had spread out on a blanket on top of one of the hills behind your house and had been relaxing there for a while now. Lee'd come over earlier in the day, and while a range of activities had been discussed, from staying home to heading down to the beach, a picnic on the hill had been the choice you both settled on. A small spread was laid out in front of you, some bottled water, soft drinks, as well as chips and sliced fruit. You sat up and reached for a snack, listening to Lee talk away about the musical she'd gotten to see a few days ago. It was unbelievable. There was singing, dancing, and crazy stunts, and it was all done live, right in front of my face. Maybe one day we could go together. I've got to see more shows like that. You smiled at Lee's enthusiasm, knowing how much she enjoyed singing and performing. And she was good at it, too. You got a chance to hear her sing a couple of tunes, and you know she put a lot of effort into it. You also liked to sing, but you weren't very good. You also liked to sing and had talent of your own. You didn't like to sing, but you'd been told you were good at it. You weren't good, and that suited you fine. I like to sing, and I have been told that I'm good at it, so I guess I like to sing and had talent of my own. It was nice the two of you could share that interest. I wonder if maybe we could put on our old show. Think of how fun it'd be. We could perform for our parents and ask our friends and some other people to come and watch too. It could totally work. Yeah, let's do it. I don't know about that. The idea gave you stage right. Sure, I'll give it a go. Not a good idea. Embarrassing. I don't know. But wouldn't showing off to everybody be fun? Ah, you're an extrovert. The thought of an audience made you feel queasy. Not really. Are you really super sure? You have so many skills you could show off to the masses. Okay, I'll do it. I really don't want to. Oh, why? I'd rather do something else. Okay, I'll do it. You can see that Lee was really excited about the idea, so with a small nod of your head, you agreed to go along with it. I'm gonna sing. Do you want to, or maybe do something else? I'll sing too. Cool, we'll perform an incredible duet. Is there anything else that's coming to your head? One more thing. I'll make a backdrop. Yeah, so to make a real show. I'll draw, I'll paint, also. I'll draw. You had an art kit at home full of colored pencils and markers that you could use to create a piece for the show. You just hope there'd be a large enough piece of paper or cardboard for a backdrop. Is there anything else that's coming to you? One more thing. I'll play the guitar. That'll be perfect. I think that'll all make an amazing show. You've got things pretty covered. The two of you ran back to your house to grab the supplies you needed, dodging your mom's amused questions before heading back out to the blanket to get started. You settled down with your guitar sitting in your lap. Lee and you discussed the plans in detail, settling on a song first and then practicing out parts for the show. The afternoon passed quickly, the sun dropping lower and lower in the sky, and after having thoroughly worked on about how the show was going to go, you decided to take a break. Oh, you know, we should have invited Code to watch us practice for our show. He could tell us if it's bad before we put on the real thing. That's smart. You guess that would be okay. I'm glad he didn't see. He said nothing. You guess that would have been okay. Might have been nice for Cove to be there, but you felt weird when thinking about him watching the show. We could ask him to watch us another time. Maybe. Too bad Derek isn't in the neighborhood today. I like him. Yeah, he's a good person. I really like him too. He's okay. Kind of boring. I don't really like him. Yeah, he's a good person. I knew you'd think so. So exactly how much do you like him? Or maybe there's someone else that I haven't heard of yet? Lee wriggled her eyebrows at you suggestively, and you know exactly what she was implying. Lee, there's nobody I like that right now. I can't answer that. I have a crush, yeah. I can't answer that. Lee's eyes sparkled in an instant like she just hit the jackpot. What? Who is it? I'm not giving you a name. Someone from school. It's Derek. Mr. Holden. Kyra. Those are funny. I want to say Kyra. Lee burst out laughing, her face going red. Oh my gosh, Nin, she's a mom. You weren't surprised when Lee started squeezing you for more detail, then you answered as much as you were comfortable with. The two of you talked about your preferences and who you liked and stuff. And it was nice having someone to speak with about these sort of things. Finally, you both decided to pack everything up and head back home for the evening. Lee talked excitedly about the show as you did, and you thought back on what you'd already accomplished for it. You could definitely do with a little more practice, but what you had so far was a solid foundation for the performance. Ah, someone is doing something outside. Alright, I'll try to wrap this up quickly. Upon walking through the front door, you were met by your moms and Elizabeth hovering around each other in the living room. Tension hung thick in the air as the three of them turned to you and Lee, frowning slightly. You'd interrupted something. Exactly what? You weren't sure. Wow, who died? What's going on? You looked between them but said nothing. Hello. Wow, who died? Ma winced and almost immediately you knew joking was the wrong thing for this. You really hope no one was actually dead. We were just having a talk with your sister. The room fell quiet again with no one quite knowing what to say. You felt incredibly awkward, but the silence didn't last long. You don't have to stop just because those two are here. There's no reason to try keeping it a secret. Elizabeth was mad, her arms folded defensively over her chest, but her mom was not in agreement with her. Elizabeth was asking about her parents. Her biological ones. The world spun around you at the news. You couldn't understand why this was happening now. I'd assumed that she was Ma's from a previous marriage or something. Okay. When you glanced at Lee, she shuffled her feet uncomfortably as though she didn't know if she should be there or not anymore. You didn't either. Your moms had always been open and honest about the fact that neither of them had given birth to you or your sister. The details hadn't been fully explained before. It made sense that Elizabeth didn't know a lot about her biological parents and wanted to know more. You just had never thought you'd accidentally stumble into it. Elizabeth looked at your parents expectantly. She wasn't going to let the unintentional interruption derail things. We don't want to keep that information from either of you. It's your right to know your past, but we did want to wait until you'd asked us to hear yourselves. Well, it's happening now, so... Your mom shared a nervous glance, and Ma took in a quick breath before speaking again. I adopted you from the Philippines when you were just a baby. Elizabeth dropped her arms, her eyebrows shooting upwards in surprise. Wait, I wasn't born here? No, you weren't. Great. You could clearly see that your sister was appalled by this information. You struggled even more with what to do or how to react. Am I gonna have to pass some tests to even be a citizen?
No.
No, you were adopted into the country. We took care of things. You're already a citizen. You have nothing to worry about. I followed all the laws when it came to bringing a child into the US. Nothing can be held against you. Elizabeth sighed, placated with the information, but still far from happy. Who are my parents, as people? Why did they put me up for adoption in the first place? Ma softly put her hands over Elizabeth's shoulder, trying to provide some support before she gave her the answer. I'm so sorry, sweetie. Your parents were reported to have died. They didn't go into the details on the specifics of how, but you were an orphan. I wish we had better news for you, Elizabeth. Elizabeth was torn between emotions, her eyes filled with tears as she threw her hands into the air, settling on enraged. Great, so I could never meet them even if I wanted to. Not that I could have anyway, since I lived in another part of the world while they were still alive. Elizabeth turned her back on you and your moms and stormed off, sprinting up the stairs into her room before anyone could stop her. I have to go and talk to her. Ma immediately started to follow, but Mom gently held her by the arm and shook her head. We should give her a little space to process it all. Your Ma's head hung low, but she stopped walking. With Elizabeth now gone, the two of them seemed to remember you and Lee were still standing awkwardly off to the side. I'm sorry you had to see all that. It's not how I expected it would have happened when the time came. But since it's the topic of the day, then is there anything you'd like to ask? You deserve to know, after all. Lee patted your back and gave you a supportive look. Yeah, let's hear it. Your parents both nodded and synced to your reply, ready to talk. I can leave if you want to have things be private. I want you to be here. I can do that. Lee shifted a little closer to you in support, and you were glad to have her there with you. Made you feel a little stronger somehow. You turned to face your parents again, preparing yourself for what they were about to tell you. Mal was the first to speak, her voice quivering with emotion. You were adopted as a baby, but 2 years after Elizabeth. We used a different organization that time, and you were adopted within the U.S. We're sorry to tell you, Nin, your parents had also passed away, and no other family member took you in, if there were any. That's why we wanted to wait until you asked. We didn't want to suddenly drop that in your lap. We wanted you to be prepared. We're sorry, Nin. Lee gave you a reassuring squeeze on the arm to show she was there for you. Thank you for telling me? Okay. You said nothing. It's not your fault. You didn't kill him, right? You started to cry. You were angry. Thank you for telling me. I did want to know, and now I do. Thank you for listening, Nin. If there's anything else you want to know, and all you have to do is ask, we'll do our best to answer any questions you have. How are you feeling now? Are you going to be okay? Lee watched you closely, as though judging how exactly she should react to what was going on. Come on! I feel fine. I feel fine, but you didn't mean that. You started to cry. Held back tears, but you weren't fine at all. Anger rose. You said nothing. I feel fine, but you didn't mean that. You spoke in the most convincing tone you could. Your moms gave you a small smile, and you weren't so sure they believed you. You don't seem to have any words after that. You went up to your room. You needed to stay here with your moms. You wanted to get out of the house. You wanted to see Elizabeth. You were worried about Elizabeth. Even though she'd been so angry when talking to your moms about everything, you could see she was clearly sad. You headed over to the stairs and up to her room. You asked Lee to go with you. She nodded and followed near behind. Waiting in front of your sister's door, you raised a hand to knock on it. There was no answer for a good minute or two, and when you jiggled the handle, you found it was locked. Raising your hand again, you knocked louder this time, thinking she must have her headphones on and couldn't hear you. When she didn't answer the door a second time, it was clear that she either still couldn't hear you or was straight up ignoring you. It hurt to be shut out, especially right now. You went up to your room, you wanted to get out of the house. I'm gonna go out just for a little while. I'll be back before it's really late. Your mouth nodded in understanding, trusting you to make the best call for yourself. Lee's footsteps echoed from behind you, and you knew she was following you. You encouraged. Can you stay, Lee? I want to go by myself. You encouraged her? You said nothing. You encouraged her. Can you come with me? You know I can. She gave you a small smile and walked with you to the door. Aw, Lee. Without knowing where you really wanted to go, you began to walk down the street quietly, dragging your feet. Lee's footsteps echoed on the pavement behind you as she caught up, falling into step beside you. You turned and kept walking, unsure of what else to do. Everyone else had been so upset, and you didn't have the first idea on how you could help. Eventually, you found yourself at the beach, your feet sinking into the soft sand while you looked out over the ocean. You took off your shoes and pasted the sand over the water's edge, letting the cool ocean swirl around your bare feet. It was comforting being there with the ocean breeze rustling your yellow hair and the smell of salty water filling your nostrils. Eventually, you took a seat down on the ground, watching the sun as it dipped down further and further towards the horizon before it disappeared completely. Your cousin stalwartly kept you company without trying to force you into speaking. The sky shifted from blue and pink to orange and then the deep blue of night. A sudden shout drew your attention away from the sea. Someone was calling your name. Your head snapped back to the source of the yells. At the edge of the beach, where grass met the sand, was a silhouette in the darkness, but the person was still unmistakable to you. It was Cove, naturally. What was he doing here? His eyes settled on you ahead. Realizing you were in fact there, he rushed down the shore to where you sat. You could tell he was out of breath when he approached. He rose to meet him. Cove, did something happen? No, not to me anyway. I want to know what happened to you. I went to your house to say hi, but your parents said that you were gone, that you needed to get away. I mean, I had to think that something was going on after something like that, so I came to find you. Lee gave him a smile, but put a supportive hand on your shoulder as you know how to try explaining this to someone. There's a lot going on. It's nothing. Didn't speak to him. Thank you for coming. I'm glad you're here. My parents are dead. I'm glad you're here. Cove's forehead furrowed in concern at your words. My mom and dad who gave birth to me, they're dead. Without having to say anything else, Cove reached over and pulled you into a tight embrace, his familiar warmth enveloping you. I'm sorry, Nen. His words were whispered comfortingly into your shoulder. You don't have to do this. I'm okay. You started to cry. You took a step back. This is a heavy way to end the episode, huh? You started to cry. You pressed your face into the crook of his neck, unable to stop the tears. The hold he had on you tightened. Can you explain everything to me? Ah! Noise! I'm cursed. Cursed, I say. Cursed! You nodded softly before taking in a heavy breath and launching into the story. Cove sat quietly and listened attentively, nodding every now and then or taking in a sharp inhale. It took a long time for you to relay the details. Dozens of stars were pinpointed in the sky as the night wore on. Why does it take that long to explain? The whole conversation lasted like 5 minutes. Silence settled between you as Cove sat quietly for a moment, contemplating everything you'd said. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, drifting through the night towards you. Nen.
I'm so sorry.
I'm really sorry about what happened to your parents. So sorry. It's not like they told me how they died. He stopped suddenly and took in a deep, shaky breath, and you got the impression he was struggling with what was right to say. I'm sad I'll never get to know them. I feel bad that I don't feel worse. I'm just so mad. I feel bad that I don't feel worse. It's not like I knew them. Yeah, I never knew them at all. They're strangers even if they did have me. Man, you're not doing anything wrong. You know that, right? I think you can be as sad as you want for as long as you need, or you can feel okay about it whenever you need to. He sighed and ran ahead through his hair as he looked out over the ocean. I guess what I'm trying to say is, whatever you feel about it is how you feel about it. You don't have to force yourself to be different. Thank you, Cove. You cried sadly, cried in relief, you nodded. Thank you. His words had made you feel better, and you knew it was true. You didn't have to apologize or make any excuses for the way you felt about it at all. Cove smiled at you a little, and you could tell he was trying to be comforting. And your moms definitely don't. It doesn't matter if you're not blood related, you're definitely family. I can see that, and I hope you can too. You felt the reassurance in his eyes. Your cousin tried not to interrupt your explanation or Cove's response to it. When the opportunity arose, she made it clear she'd share the same sentiment. I like you, Lee. You're very good. You're a good cousin. The sudden voice of your sister behind you made you jump. You saw her standing a little way away. She walked closer and you didn't quite know what to do or what she was planning on saying. Would you mind going? I want to talk to just Nin. You can come back. It's not going to be forever or anything. Cove seemed equal parts concerned and skeptical. Leaving now wasn't a concept that thrilled him. Lee wasn't exactly jumping to go, so she checked with you quietly. What do you think? I want to talk to you too. You can't ask that. You nodded your head in agreement. I want to talk to you too. I want to talk to you too.
Really?
Oh, then we're on the same page. She made a little move-along gesture with her hands, and it was settled. You waited until the two of you were alone before fixing her with an inquisitive look. Elizabeth folded her arms, looking you over. Did Moms tell you about your parents too? My birth parents also died? I don't want to talk about it. Mine also died. Elizabeth broke eye contact after that.
Sorry.
Why did you want to talk to me? I went to see you and you didn't even answer. Elizabeth raised an eyebrow at the news.
What?
I didn't hear anything. Shutting everything out with loud music was very typical of your sister. You didn't feel much less confused, though. Why did you stop doing that, then? She shook her head as though the answer should be obvious. I was worried about you. I was the one who brought it up, but I made you deal with whatever was left when I was gone. She sighed, glancing upwards for a moment before settling on you once more. I wanted to ask you what happened without everyone breathing down our necks. I was pretty crappy of you to just bail. I'm amazed you noticed that was unkind. Thank you for thinking of me. I'm not mad at you. You were quietly surprised by her admission. I don't think it was bad of her to leave. And I think that anyone would notice that it was not the right thing to do, but I don't think I need to point out to her that it was unkind. Because, I mean, she was in her own emotions. What good would being negative do here? I could thank her for thinking of me. I'm not mad at her. And I am a bit surprised. So, I'm not mad at you, I guess. She stuck up her nose a little at that, but her smile was soft. I'm okay, Elizabeth. It didn't upset me. How are you allowed to be that mature? The lightning spirits in her were quickly gone as she slipped back into a scowl. You have to be born in the US to become president. Oh, that's what you're mad about? What? You'd never heard of that dream of hers before. She noticed your bafflement and continued. I get I was never going to be president, but it just feels weird having stuff taken away, not even getting a chance at it. I don't like having to know that when I was born, I was going to have a completely different life. So different that I can't even think about what it'd look like in my head. I could have spoken another language, lived away from anything I'd ever seen here, had someone else as my sibling. And then my parents died and I was adopted, and the life I got became a totally new thing forever. I can't go back to what it was even if I wanted to. A heaviness settled between you and the person who became your sister. I feel like that too. You knew exactly how she felt. I don't really understand. You knew exactly how she felt. It was a confusing feeling to have lived one way for as long as you can remember, but not having it be what was originally yours. Elizabeth watched you seriously. She was still trying to make sense of this to you and herself. I don't know why today was the day. Nothing came up to make me ask the question. It was just something I've had in my head for a while. When it was just me and Mom's in the living room, I just kind of said it, finally, and there you go. She shifted from one foot to another, relaxing her stance just a bit. She also spoke more gently. Learning about them and what happened doesn't change how I feel about our family, Nin. She smirked, fixing those sharp eyes. I've already figured out a long time ago that Moms were our biological parents. That wasn't news. Technically, one of them could have been related to you. You kept listening to Elizabeth. Really doesn't change anything. You kept listening. Nothing about the family I was first born in would have made me decide that this wasn't my family anymore. If you'd hoped you'd be free of my big sisterly status, don't think you're so lucky. She bumped her shoulder against yours playfully, her lips tilted at the corners.
Be my little sibling.
Oh! You smiled softly at her, you jokingly groaned at the prospect, you bumped her back, you hugged her. You hugged her. Took a few seconds, but she gave you a quick squeeze in return. You'll always be my family too. I think I'm really lucky. You took in the moment quietly. I think I'm really lucky. Chuckling, she seemed pleased with how the conversation had gone in the end. Ready to head back home? It's been a long day. He gave her a nod. And come on, you three, let's go. We walked home together in a comfortable silence down the well-worn street. The familiarity of it all felt nice. When you stepped through the door, you found your moms quietly sitting together at the kitchen table. Their heads snapped up and they got to their feet to meet you, Ma giving you a careful smile. We're so glad to see you. Hi, sorry for walking away before. Everything's all right. You said nothing. I'm sorry for walking away before. That's all right, sweetheart. We're just happy to have you here again. Mom then came over and wrapped her arms around you and Elizabeth, giving you a tight hug. Didn't take long for Mom to join in, putting her arms around the both of you.
Love you.
You really couldn't have asked for better, kiddos. We love you. More than we could ever say. Moms. You smiled at their comfort. You were glad your moms were alright. You're smushing me. You were glad your moms were alright. I love you too. You let them hug you for as long as they needed, and it was a nice moment shared between you. They both pulled back eventually and grinned at the two of you, and you knew then it was all you had. That all you had each other. That you all had each other, and you always would. Oh my gosh. I struggled to read that. Well now, since we're all here, how about we do something together as a family? Do we have to? That sounds like an excellent idea. We should have some fun before the night's over. I love the sound of that. Lee. Yeah, okay. Oh, you're here? Why not? You hid the smile that threatened to tilt your lips, knowing that Elizabeth must have been in a good mood if she hadn't even teased Ko for being part of it. No matter what she could have said about it, you wanted him to be here. The two of you had practically grown up together over the past 5 years. Who's got a suggestion? It should be something you could do here in the house with everyone in the same room. You suddenly remembered the show you and Lee had been working on earlier. Maybe we can do our show. You were bummed you never got to do it. You weren't so keen about that now after all that happened. You were bummed. Hey, Nin, can we do our show? We just practiced it earlier. A show? This is the first we're hearing of this. I'm intrigued. It'd be amazing if you could put it on for us to watch. Oh yeah, I need to see what you've cooked up. That'd be cool. You smiled at Lee, who returned the gesture while bouncing on her heels in excitement. Take some seats and we'll get everything together. Your moms collected the chairs from around the dining table and set them in a row in the living room from where there was enough space for the show. While they did that, you and Lee quickly gathered the supplies you needed and rehashed the plan one more time. You listened to the song you'd chosen one last time, and you collected your instrument from your room, making sure it was ready to go. The backdrop you prepared earlier was also ready to go now that it was needed. When the two of you returned to the living room, everyone was sitting and chatting amongst themselves while they waited. The group quieted down when you and Lee stood in front of them on your makeshift stage. Lee was buzzing quietly with excitement behind you. You felt nervous, pumped, or unsure. Pumped! Let's do this. The time you and Lee had put into practicing was worth it. You were ready to go. Okay, so welcome to our show. We only came up with it today, but we promise it'll be good. You stayed quiet. Thank you for being here tonight. No refunds. You're gonna be really impressed. Thank you for being here. Your moms gave you a thumbs up and encouragement, ready for the performance. Then you nodded at Lee that you were ready to begin. Lee took a deep breath, waiting the few beats it took to get into the song, and started singing. Your part of the song joined in a few moments later, and you smiled at each other as you sang together. You strummed along on your guitar. When the performance was over, Lee took your hand in hers and the two of you bowed deeply together. Everyone gave you a round of applause and cheered for an encore. When you straightened yourself up and you were happy to see that even Elizabeth was clapping for you. Bravo! Bravo! You're so talented. Your family rose from their seats and came over to congratulate you more directly. You were beaming from ear to ear. Cove was the first one to approach, stepping up to you and Lee with a smile on his face. Nice job. Aww, thank you. You were really great with the guitar, Nin. It was cool. Thanks. It was pretty good, huh? You blushed and said nothing. Luckily, we had a crowd who's easily impressed. You're talking about me, aren't you? Maybe. Cove chuckled and shook his head. Hey, were you the one who drew the backdrop? Yeah, that was me. Cove smiled, content over his guess being correct. I thought so. It was good. You couldn't help but feel pleased that he could recognize your talent so easily. Your parents gushed about how great everything was, and thanked you for sharing it with them. Oh my god. Okay. Elizabeth was complimentary in her own way, although she did describe the show as cute, which you knew she meant as kind of kiddie. You laughed it off, however, and were just happy that everyone had a nice time. In that moment, you couldn't have been more pleased to be part of the family you had. Oh wow. So yeah, road trip, dinner, and family. That was good. I enjoyed that. I always enjoy these. Our Life is such a good game. We're getting closer and closer to Cove with our answers. Finding it hard not to simp. Because I think he's just adorable. But I hope you all enjoyed. Links are in the description for the planetarium Twitter at @the_planetaria. If you want to check out my art and stuff, then you can follow me at planet_Nino. Please make sure to get Our Life on Steam if you enjoyed this. And with all that said, I bid you all adieu. Have